Greetings one and all. Super Wednesdays here in the Holy Apple, in the Holy Land, on the Holy Hilltop, Tal Binyamin, 22nd day of the 10th month of the year, Tevet 5781. Today we have a special class with God's help, and with God's help it will be a two-part series, and this class is of extreme importance, especially in our days. It's an extremely important class for proud Jews, and even a more important class for people that aren't so proud to be Jews. Topic today: taking a knee, the Jewish stand. Pun intended. Taking a knee, the Jewish stand. Okay, a little bit of a heads up. We will be speaking about two holidays, two rabbinical holidays of the year. That is Hanukkah and also Purim. But please, some people get a little bit nervous when they hear something about a holiday that was, or that they're hearing about a holiday that's only going to be in 6 weeks. But it's not. I'm using these two holidays as examples. The point of the class, taking a knee, it's good for all year and all life. So don't get caught up, well, we passed Hanukkah or we're way in front of Purim. That's not the major subject here whatsoever. It's our jumping board. Okay, approximately 1200 years ago, Bala Shiltot, he, in his book, very interesting way, it goes according to the portion of the week, and then he brings down a discourse on the portion of the week, and also brings down various laws that are connected to the portion of the week. Now, all of a sudden, out of the blue, it catches a lot of eyes amongst our commentaries who ask the question on the Baal Shiltot. Baal Shiltot pulls a surprise when on the portion of Vayishlach, which 90% of the time is two Shabbatot, two Shabbases before Hanukkah, and occasionally 10% it could be a week before the Shabbos of Hanukkah, like it actually happened this year. There was only Vayeshev this year, one portion. So all the commentators ask, what's going on? If you look at other similar commentaries, like the Ben Ish Chai, who writes on the portion of the week, you'll see that he does not bring down the laws of Hanukkah during the portion of Vayishlach. So, for some reason, the Baal Shiltot 1200 years ago saw a tremendous connection between the two, the portion of Vayishlach and the holiday of Hanukkah. Now, we will see, with God's help, 13 similarities. There are more, believe it or not, but we'll suffice with 13 similarities between what's discussed in the portion of Vayishlach and what's happening during Hanukkah. But before we get to the 13 similarities, we have two sources. One is Bereshit Rabbah 84:3, speaks about Jacob's 4 tragedies during his life. He had battles with his brother Esav, he had battles with Lavan, he had battles with Dinah being abducted, kidnapped in Shechem. He had battles during his life because of the fact that his son Joseph disappeared for 22 years. So those are the number 4. In Shmot Rabbah 26:1, we are given 4 exiles of Israel, which include Babylonia, Madai, Greece, and the present, which is the exile of Edom. There are many, many commentators that connect the 4 exiles of the nation of Israel and the 4, what seems on the exterior to be 4 personal tragedies of Jacob. They are connected together. Each of the personal, so-called personal tragedies, because we know that our forefathers and our mothers, they were, what happens to them during their lives is not a private issue. Maseh Avot Siman Lebanim. Whatever happened to our forefathers, that happens. It plays out throughout all of history during current events. So, our sages point out that Greece, or Syrian Greece, is connected directly to the tragedy of Dinah being raped in the city of Shechem, Nablus. So right away, we see in this week's portion, Vayishlach, of course, the tragedy of Dinah is brought down. And this is connected to the Syrian Greek exile of the Jewish people when Hanukkah took place. So we see right off the bat a tremendous connection between this portion of the week, Vayishlach, and the holiday of Hanukkah. Okay, now 13 similarities. Let's run through them. Number 1, before in Vayishlach, before reaching the city of Shechem, we are told that Jacob encamped with his family in a place called Sukkot. Now, that's very interesting because the holiday before Hanukkah, of course, is Sukkot, which is some 70 days before the holiday of Sukkot. What's even more interesting is that Jacob, our sages tell us, passed away on the first day, the 15th day of Tishrei, first day of Sukkot. Now, if we do the math, so the Torah tells us in Vayishlach that Jacob encamped in a place called Sukkot. Sukkot is the holiday before Hanukkah. Jacob passes away during the holiday of Sukkot. If we do the math that the Egyptians mourned Jacob's death for 70 days, if we do from the 15th day of Tishrei 70 days, amazingly we get to the 25th day of the month of Kislev, which is Bul, which is Hanukkah. Another interesting possibility is that Jacob was not buried on the first day of Hanukkah, but rather the last day of Hanukkah. Why is that? Because we saw in last week's portion of Vayechi that when they came to the land of Israel, in a place called Evel Shittim, the population mourned for, the local population mourned for Jacob for 7 days. So if we do the math, that would come out to the last day of Hanukkah, which is a very special holy day, Zot Chanukah, which is the last opportunity for repentance connected to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. So once again, we have a tremendous connection. Vayishlach, it tells us about Jacob living in a place called Sukkot. Jacob passes away during the holiday of Sukkot, and Sukkot, of course, the holiday before Hanukkah, and that is exactly the time that Jacob was buried. He was buried during the holiday of Hanukkah, though he died on Sukkot. Once again, some other interesting similarities. We know Hanukkah being 8 days and Sukkot being 8 days. There is no other holiday that is similar. Passover is 7 days and Shavuot is 1 day. So that's another one. Another similarity, one of the decrees, not very well known, but one of the decrees of the Syrian Greeks against the Jewish people, they were not allowed to celebrate the holiday of Sukkot. Very interesting why they picked on the holiday of Sukkot. There are other Jewish holidays, but that was one of the decrees. Ironically, or not, we know that the coin for the victory of the Maccabees, the Hashmonaim, over the Greek-Syrian Empire, they minted a coin, and on that coin were the 4 species of the holiday of Sukkot. The Jewish people were depressed that year they were not able to celebrate Sukkot because it was against the law. So therefore, the victory coin against the Greeks had on it a picture of the 4 species, even though we're in the holiday of Hanukkah and not Sukkot. But once again, we see that connection. By the way, this is not just a ideological idea. This is brought down. The connection between Sukkot and Hanukkah is brought down in Aruch HaShulchan, chapter 670, law number 5. Okay, second similarity. It says that Dinah, when she arrived in Shechem, she went out to see the women of the land. In Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, in chapter 38, tells us that Shechem set up for girls to be playing musical instruments in order to entice Dinah to step outside, and then she would be abducted. So this was a scheme that Shechem had set up in order to interest Dinah. So we have girls playing in the streets of the city of Shechem musical instruments. This draws Dinah in. Once again, we see for the first time a connection. First time in the book of Genesis, we see like a connection to Gentile culture. This was the first time. Dinah goes out to see, to understand, and learn about the girls, the women of the city of Shechem. She hears the music and it draws her in. So too, we have the holiday of Hanukkah. Holiday of Hanukkah is, we first meet a concept of Hellenist Jews, Jews that act like the Greeks. In Egypt, we did not have such a phenomena of Jews that acted like Egyptians. But this is like a new phenomena of the Jews trying to integrate the Gentile culture within them. So once again, this is a second similarity of connecting to the culture of the non-Jews. Number 3, in this week's in the portion of Vayishlach, we read about Dinah being abused and raped. We know on Hanukkah it's very similar. All Jewish women, women that were scheduled to marry, or women that were not married, they were single, they were forced to have relations, they were raped by various Greek military officials. This went on for 3 years and 8 months, so another similarity. Number 4, twice in the portion of Vayishlach, the people, the inhabitants of Shechem, they turn to Jacob and the sons, and they say, we want to become one nation. We want to become one nation. And once again, this is a first in the book of Genesis. This is a first. So there is a desire on the part of the inhabitants of Shechem to assimilate with Israel. And this is also true. Not only in the city of Shechem was that true, but also the Greeks were interested in assimilating the Jews in order to become one nation. And we could see this as we are told in the Mishnah, in Tractate Midot, chapter 2, Mishnah 3. We are told that one of the first things the Greeks did when they entered the temple was to destroy a partition called the soreg. The soreg, there was a sign in various languages that Gentiles could no longer go any further at that point in the Jewish temple. So in order to eliminate and erase separation between Jews and non-Jews, the whole goal of the Syrian Greeks was to assimilate. So we have the same story in city of Shechem wanting to become one nation with the Jewish people. Number 5, circumcision. But in both cases, it's a big point. Number 1, in the city of Shechem, they wanted to be one nation. They didn't want to have any difference between them and the Jewish people. So therefore, they said, we will circumcise in order that we will become one, in order that we will be able to assimilate the Jewish people. We will do this operation of circumcision in order that there will be no difference between us. This will assist us to assimilate them. This is the same thing, just on the opposite shoe. In the times of the decrees against the Jewish people during the Second Temple, times of the Greeks also wanted to assimilate with the Jewish people. Here, just the opposite. They said that the Jewish people cannot perform the commandment of circumcision, that everyone would be the same. Everyone would be unified. Okay. Are we okay there, Tzvi, with that outage for a second? We're okay? Okay, number 6. We have a concept of majority and minority. In the portion of Vayishlach, we see that Jacob's family was overwhelmingly outnumbered by the citizens of the city of Shechem. Even so, the minority was victorious over the majority. Same storyline during the holiday of Hanukkah, where the minority, the Jews, were successful in defeating the majority, the Greeks. 7. In a dispute between Jacob and his 2 sons, Shimon and Levi, who attacked the city of Shechem, the last word in this dispute is given to Shimon and Levi. They turn to Jacob and say, listen, are you going to allow these inhabitants of Shechem to turn our sister into a prostitute? And that's the end. That's the last line of the conversation. So too, we have the same exact conversation. This time, moving forward to the time of Chanukah, we have Matityahu's daughter. Her name was Chana, and she gave a speech which was extremely similar and brought in, as we'll see she brought in the case of Shimon and Levi going to battle because the Shechem population turned a daughter of Israel into a prostitute. So, moving forward in history, Hannah, the daughter of Matityahu, she too reminds the Jewish people at the time of Hanukkah, it's time we wake up. Why are you allowing Jewish women to become prostitutes? They're forced to have relations with Greek military officials. Same principle here. Number 8, similarity. Right after the story of the victory of Shimon and Levi and the Jewish family of Jacob over the inhabitants of Shechem, they go to a place called Beit El, where they erect an altar. Same, of course, in Hanukkah, one of the first things, or the first thing that the Jewish people do after the victory, after the military battle victory over the Greeks, is they rededicate the temple. Same point. 9. Jacob's words to his children after the victory of his children in the city of Shechem is purify yourself. Same story in the time of Hanukkah. Even though the Jewish law is that as a nation, as a community, they were allowed to use contaminated oil to light the menorah. However, they wanted to light the menorah in purity. So therefore, the miracle of the oil, they only found one flask of oil that was pure, lasting the same amount of time. The same idea here is the purification of the Jewish people after a victory. Number 10. Now this is a real big one, and towards the end of the class, probably the second class, we will go more in depth on this point because it's really a grand slam point. In the portion of Vayishlach, we see that after Jacob is victorious over the angel of Esav, he changes his name to Israel. Now, his name was changed twice. Once the angel mentions this, but really the angel was giving a heads up to Jacob that soon God will come himself and change the name. So it's not really like the angel changed the name and God just did a replay on it. No, it was a heads up by the angel of Esav telling Jacob that his name will no longer be Jacob but Israel. And then God, in the same portion of the week, God goes after the battle of Shechem by Shimon and Levi. God officially gives him the stamp of the name of Israel. Now, we also see, for the first time in the Torah, in the book of Genesis, we see the Jewish people called by the name of Israel. Abraham is called Ivri. He's from the other side of the Jordan River. But the term Israel, we see for the first time. We see that the sons of Jacob come, and in order to convince the brothers and the family that there's a need to go out and fight, they say an abomination has occurred in Israel the first time. We see the expression Israel is when the Jewish people are about to revolt, the minority against the majority, against this abomination that took place where a daughter of Israel was raped and defiled. And moving forward, on Hanukkah, if we look at the prayer of Al Anisim, we will see there 3 times it uses the expression Israel. Now, comparing this to the holiday, let's say, of Purim, we will not find that expression. Israel, we will find the expression Jews, but not Israel. So once again, in Vayishlach, Jacob's name is changed from Jacob to Israel, and the sons of Jacob use this as a reason, as a springboard to go out and fight, to stand up and fight. Dinah is defiled in the land of Israel. This is not something that happens over the border. This is happening. The defilement of Dinah occurs in the land of Israel, which makes it more of a desecration of God's name. Hanukkah, same story. We have an exile of the Jewish people. Even though the temple exists, the Jewish people for 180 years are subservient to the Syrian Greeks. So we have an exile, we have a defilement of the Jewish people in the land of Israel. 12. Vayishlach is the 8th portion of the book of Genesis. 8 days of Hanukkah. 13. Jacob is punished because of the fact that in Vayishlach he calls Esav 8 times my master. For this, our sages tell us that the Jewish people suffered that before a Jewish king would rule, 8 non-Jewish kings from Esav would rule. And as we spoke about in the past, we've had many classes on it, we have our seesaw. That means if Esav is ruling, they have kings, then the Jewish people are on the bottom. If the Jews have their kings, they're ruling, then Esav, the Gentile world, is on the bottom. So, once again, we have the number 8. So those are 13 similarities. And of course, the idea of oil is that no matter what form of liquid you put in oil, it always remains separate. And that's the idea in the portion of Vayishlach. A separation is created by the children of Jacob, children of Israel, against assimilation with the people, inhabitants of Shechem. And the same story as Hanukkah, where the Jews had an uprising, a revolt, in order to keep separate from the nations of the world, which is represented by the oil. Okay, moving right along. Our second issue here. In the portion of the week of Vayishlach, which we see tremendous connections to Hanukkah, we know that Jacob bowed down to Esav 7 times. Jacob bowed down to Esav 7 times. The only exception was Benjamin. Jacob's son Benjamin did not bow down. Why didn't he bow down? It wasn't that he was there, present. However, he was an embryo in his mother's womb. So therefore, he never bowed down to Esav. Which is even more interesting is that if we see the sequence of events, how the children of Jacob bow down to Esav, see something very interesting, that in the case of Rachel, who of course is the mother of Benjamin, she does not go in front of the eyes of Esau. She is blocked by Joseph. Joseph on purpose did not want the wicked Esau to look at his mother or to take a look at spiritually the baby in the womb of Rachel. So it's very interesting that that Rachel was totally, and Benjamin totally blocked. Are we okay there on the camera? Sweet. Okay. We are told by the Riva. The Riva lived approximately 900 years ago. Tells us gives us an amazing line. On his commentary on the Torah in the portion of V'zot HaBracha, on the verse of Levinyamin Amar, he tells us that because of the fact that Benjamin did not bow down to Esav, God decided that the temple would be built, even though Jerusalem was not given proportioned to the tribes. The certain part of the temple was, and this was in the section of, the temple was considered to be in the section of Benjamin. And he merited that because he was the only brother that did not bow down to the wicked Esau. So that was 900 years ago by the Riva. Now, the Shla Kadosh tells us in the portion of Vayishlach on page 240 and then again on 251. The Shla tells us that all the tribes were blemished because of the fact that they bowed down to the wicked Esau. And therefore, the only tribe that was not blemished by this bowing down and trying to appease this wicked Esau was Benjamin. And therefore, interestingly enough, if we look right after the encounter between Jacob and Esau and his family, we see that Jacob is blessed, that from Jacob will come kingship. Who is that? Our sages tell us this is Benjamin. Kings will come from Benjamin. Now this acted as a consolation for Jacob, because Jacob realized that there was a mistake here, a grave mistake, as we'll see in a couple of minutes how grave this was. So God came to him to console him and say, you know what, there's hope for the Jewish people. Why? Because one of your sons did not bow down. And because of the fact that your one son, Benjamin, did not bow down, I will produce from that tribe kings. Why? Because a king does not bow to anyone. And that was the greatness of Benjamin. He never bowed down to anyone. Never bowed down to anyone. So, we should ask a question. We should shout out loud. How could this be? We know that there is a prohibition to have monarchy from any tribe besides Judah, Yehudah. So what is this? What is this addition that God comes to Jacob after the bowing down, and he says, don't worry, there is hope. Even though all of you bowed down, There is hope because one of your sons did not bow down, and that is a symbol, the icon of a king. People bow to him. He doesn't bow down to others. So therefore, there was a special paragraph allowed here. Really, according to the original plan, all of the monarchy was to come from Judah. But because of the fact that Judah bowed down to Esau, his uncle, he was punished. He was punished that the first kings of Israel would not be from Judah, but rather from Benjamin, if it was King Saul or Ishbosheth. And all in the merit of not taking a knee, standing up. Now, we have two sources, actually three sources. Listen closely, clean your ears out. This is amazing. If not for the fact that Benjamin did not bow down, did not take a knee to Esau, the Jewish people would have been destroyed. You heard that correctly. The Jewish people would have been destroyed. Benjamin saved the Jewish people from destruction. Not my words. The Ramah from Pano, approximately 400 years ago, he writes this in his amazing work called Asara Mamarot. Now, he brings this down, not in his name. He brings it down from one of his rabbis, named Rabbi Avram Galanti. We're talking about 450, 500 years ago. So the Ramah of Pano brings down from his rabbi, the Rabbi Avram Galanti, this unbelievable message of the destruction of the Jewish people, possibly. This is also brought down in a third source in a book called Yalkut Ruveni on the portion of Vayishlach, paragraph 106. So thank God Benjamin did not take a knee. Now folks, put on that seatbelt. There was someone else that didn't take a knee. Somebody that's a well-kept secret. It's not really a secret, but we never thought about it. And this person that I'm going to mention sparked this person that I will mention. She is one of these stars, quote unquote, in the portion of Vayishlach, which is connected to the holiday of Hanukkah. She sparked the revolution during the days of Hanukkah. And we're talking about none other than, drumroll, Dinah. See, Dinah was hidden by Jacob, her father, in a box, suitcase, so Esau would not want to marry her. So she was hidden. So the only two souls that did not bow down, take a knee to Esau, was Benjamin, who was not born yet, and number two, Dinah, who was hidden. So therefore, she never bowed down. Now, we know, as I mentioned, the term Israel is used for the first time by the sons of Jacob as a catalyst to go out and fight against the inhabitants of Shechem. And it's explained in many books that a woman is connected to the sphere, the seven spiritual channels that God created the world, the seven characteristic traits. A woman is connected to the sphere of Malchut. So it wasn't a private, it wasn't a personal defiling of Dinah. This was, Dinah represents, Dinah was the only daughter of Jacob. Therefore, she represents the kingdom of Israel. And the kingdom of Israel was defiled. And therefore, there was a need to stand up and revolt against the inhabitants of Shechem. Now, because of the fact that Dinah never bowed down to Esav, this set off the spark. During the time of Hanukkah, when the daughter of Matityahu, Hannah, got up before her wedding day, when she was about to be attacked by everyday Jews, by the Jewish sages, as she rolled up her sleeve to try to catch the attention, doing something immodest, trying to catch the attention of the Jewish people present at her wedding. And she said, "You are so zealous against poor me. Where is your zealousness? Where has it been hiding for the last 3 years and 8 months when we're suffering decree after decree by the Syrian Greeks? Where is your zealousness for the daughters of Israel who are defiled day in and day out? Oh, because I happen to roll up my sleeve." This is all written in the Midrash of Hanukkah. And she mentions, remember, they said, "We are a minority. What do you want from us? This is a Greek empire. We are weak." And then she turned to them and said, "You don't remember Dinah? You don't remember Shimon and Levi? You don't remember the revolt that took place in the city of Shechem? How many were they? And they went out and they were successful. If we stand up, if we don't take a knee any longer, for 3.8 years we took a knee to the Gentiles, to the Syrian Greeks, and to all their decrees. We took a knee. If we stand up like the children of Jacob, we too, with God's help, will be victorious." All inspired by Dinah. Up until the days of Hanukkah, the flame of Dinah continued amongst the people of Israel. Now, folks, there was another Benjamin that did not bow down, that did not take a knee, and you will be surprised. On January 26, 1904, Benjamin Herzl, another Benjamin, had an audience with Pope Pius X in the Vatican to seek his support for the Zionist effort to establish a Jewish state in Palestine. He recorded his account of the meeting in his diary. "Yesterday, I met with the Pope. The route was already familiar to me since I had traveled it with Lepay several times. Past the Swiss lackeys who looked like clerics, and clerics who looked like lackeys, the papal officers and chamberlains. I arrived 10 minutes ahead of time, and I did not have to wait. I was conducted through numerous small reception rooms till I arrived at the Pope's office. He received me standing and held out his hand, which I did not kiss." Folks, amazing. Benjamin Herzl, Lepay, who was one of the officers working for the Pope, had warned me a few times that I had to do it, but I did not. Okay, he was warned. I believe that I incurred this displeasure of the Pope by this. For everyone who visits him kneels down and kisses his hand. This caused me a lot of worry. I was quite glad when it was finally out of the way. Folks, we've heard a lot of bad things about Herzl. But how many people, how many of us know that there's a second side of a coin? There are bad things. But how tragic it is that this story, how many people know of it? Tremendous. Benjamin, just like our ancestor Benjamin did not take a knee to the wicked Esau, there was something in this Benjamin that held him back from kissing the hand and kneeling down, taking a knee before the evil Pope. How detrimental is taking a knee to the wicked? For this, we have Rabbi Soloveitchik in his book Uvdot ve'Hanagot on page 200. Listen closely. He asked the question, Rabbi Soloveitchik, how catastrophic, is it to bow down to the wicked? Listen to this. Even though Benjamin was not yet born, the fact that he did not take a knee, the fact that he did not bow down, he merited to have the temple in his portion in the land of Israel, even though he was not born yet. We say he didn't make a choice. He didn't have, it could be that if he was there, if he was already born, he would have done like everyone else. He would have followed the Jones and bowed down. Doesn't matter, says Rabbi Soloveitchik. The fact that he wasn't there, the fact that he did not bow down, makes a tremendous difference in a personality, in the DNA, the RNA of a person, of a human being, in the genealogy of a person. Even if a person, this is Rabbi Soloveitchik continuing, even if a person has no intention to show honor, the fact that they bow down, take a knee to the wealthy and influential people, he no longer is worthy to lead the Jewish people, or for the temple to be in their inheritance. So, it's something that we could ask, how was Jacob allowed to continue if we say that there's a big deficiency here? That's true. But see, with Jacob, there was a difference, because according to the Zohar Kadosh tells us in the portion of Vayishlach that Jacob never would have bowed down to the wicked Esau. Jacob saw the divine presence pass by, and therefore in order to honor the divine presence, he bowed down. However, his mistake was that he did not inform his kids, and therefore they took his example and bowed down. Therefore he was also punished and responsible for this, but he was on a different plateau than his children. Okay, so we will call it a class, and God willing, Don't go anywhere. It's very, very important to hear this to the end. We shall continue next week.